Hey guys, it's been about 2 months since I did that book reading video, and I thought I'd do another, so today we're back with more Still Life with Woodpecker by Tom Robbins. It's, again, like I said, my favorite book. I know it's a lot of people's favorite book, and it's how I got into Tom Robbins in the first place, so I hope you like it, and maybe you'll get into his stuff too. Alright, last time we left off at chapter 5, I think. Chapter 5. We're on page 8. If the CIA imagined that its hospitality would charm the monogrammed socks off Max and Tilly Furstenberg Barcelona, it was once again wrong. During the first decade of their residency, the royal couple never complained about the drafty old mansion for fear the place was bugged. In later years, however, made brazen by advanced age, the bravery of childhood returning like salmon to the source, they griped as much as they pleased. The king would stand at a window during halftime or the 7th inning stretch and stare apprehensively at the creeping tide of brambles. I may be the first monarch in history to be assassinated by blackberries, he would grumble, his Teflon valve grumbled with him. The queen caressed her chihuahua. You know who lived here before we did? Smokey the bear. Encouraging her parents to move was futile. Lee Cherie learned. Max, a tall, horse-faced man with a Hitlerian mustache, shook his head so hard and long that were he wearing his crown, it would have toppled off and tumbled into the berry vines. Changing places at the table doesn't fool the cards, Max said. Move? I got 3 teas this week, said Queen Tilly. No, I forget. I got 4 teas. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o. Like a pair of R's trapped in a Spanish songbook, Tilly and Max lurked in their shoebox castle, waiting to be rolled. The princess lived in the attic. As a child, it had been her favorite playroom. It was private and cozy up there. She had liked the low slanted ceiling and the complete absence of coat of arms wallpaper. As a child, she had appreciated the view of the Puget Sound from the attic's west window and the view of the Cascade Mountains from the window facing east. There was one mountain in particular, a white peak, broad and cloud snagging, that would nearly fill the east window on those days when vision was not obscured by mist or rain. The mountain had a name, but Lee Cherie could never remember it. It's an Indian name, I think. Tonto? asked the queen. Now the windows were painted black, except for a single small pane through which the princess could entertain an occasional corner of the moon. The princess lived in the attic and did not come out. She could have come out, but she chose not to. She could have raised the windows or scraped off the paint, but she chose not to do that either. Having the windows nailed shut and painted black was her idea. The attic was illuminated by one 40-watt bulb. That was also her idea. The princess had furnished the attic as well. The attic was furnished with a cot, a chamber pot, and a package of Camel cigarettes. Once Lee Cherie had lived as much as any other young woman within her parents' domicile. She had a room in the north end of the 2nd floor, a room with a full-size bed and a comfortable chair, a desk at which to do her schoolwork, and a dresser filled with cosmetics and underwear. There was a photograph dedicated to the faithful reproduction of rock and roll, and a mirror dedicated to the flattering reproduction of her own image. There were curtains at the windows and heirloom carpets on the floor, while upon the walls posters of Hawaiian Islands rubbed edges with photographs of Ralph Nader. The room sometimes seemed pinched and stifling to her compared to that big wide world out there for which she yearned. Yet she was fond enough of her quarters and returned to them agreeably each evening when classes were over and this or that committee for this or that ecological cause was adjourned. Even after she was forced off the cheerleading squad at the University of Washington, a humiliating experience that provoked her to withdraw from college, she occupied her room as correctly as a cephalopod its shell. Those days she shared a room with Prince Charming. Prince Charming was a toad. He lived in a terrarium at the foot of Lee Cherie's bed, and yes, you nosy ones, she had kissed the toad. Once. Lightly. And yes, she felt silly as shit. When one is a princess, however, one is tempted by things that we common people barely comprehend. Besides, the circumstances under which she had acquired the toad encouraged superstitious behavior, and moreover was a little teeny quick peck on top of the frog's head, so much sillier than kissing the picture of a desired one. And who hasn't kissed a photograph at one time or another? Lee Cherie kissed Ralph Nader's photo fairly frequently. It might be noted here that Freudian analysts of fairy tales have suggested that kissing toads and frogs has symbolized fellatio. In that regard, Princess Lee Cherie was on a conscious level innocent, although not so naive as Queen Tilly, who thought fellatio was an obscure Italian opera and was annoyed that she couldn't find the score. Prince Charming was given to Lee Cherie by old Julieta, the last living of the servants who had accompanied Max and Tilly into exile at Lee Cherie's birth. In Paris, 4 of these loyalists were still in service, but all but Julieta died soon after the royal family took up residence in the Puget Sound Palace. Perhaps it was the dampness. The U.S. government provided a servant also, a man named Chuck, who was to function as gardener, chauffeur, and general handyman. He was, of course, a CIA informer. As age added infirmity to his native indolence, Chuck was no match for the great Northwest blackberries, and they edged ever closer to the walls of the house. At the wheel, he was terrifying. King Max and the princess had for some years refused to ride with him. Chuck still drove the queen to her galas and teas, however, seemingly oblivious to the Hail Marys and spaghettios bubbling in rank fear from the back seat. Regularly each fortnight, Chuck sat down to poker with the king. Even with the telltale ticker, the king regularly each fortnight took Chuck to the cleaners. Thus, Max added Chuck's salary to his own. "It's all he's good for," said Max, whose great mule face would smile faintly at what he must consider to be a little joke on the CIA. Julieta, on the other hand, was in her 80s, both efficient and energetic. Miraculously, she had kept the huge house free of cobwebs and mold while doing the royal wash and preparing 6 meals a day. Since Max and Tilly were carnivores and Lee Cherie vegetarian, each meal had in fact been 2. Old Julieta spoke no English, and Lee Cherie, who was brought to America when she was not much taller than a jug of wine, spoke nothing else. Yet it was Julieta who told Lee Cherie her bedtime story each night until she was 15. Always the same story, a story so frequently repeated that the girl came to not only comprehend its general meaning, but to actually understand every word, though pronounced in a foreign tongue. And it was Julieta who sensed the true dimensions of Lee Cherie's depression after the princess suffered a miscarriage during the UW homecoming game. She was in midair, all aleap, when the blood broke loose, rivulets racing as if to hemophilic touchdowns from beneath her diminutive cheerleading skirt. It was Julieta who sensed that her young mistress had lost more than a baby that autumn afternoon, had lost more, indeed, than the baby's father, the second-string quarterback, a pre-law student who headed to the campus chapter of the Sierra Club and intended to work for Nader someday. Although the memory of him sitting on the bench, pretending not to notice as she was whisked from Husky Stadium in embarrassment and fear, haunted her mind and her heart like an ugly specter in muddy shoes, it was Julieta who, during that unhappy aftermath, came to her with hag hands cupped around a toad. But the princess was not immediately overjoyed, but she had heard tales of old-world totems, and if toad magic could help, she'd give it a try, and let the wards fall where they may. Alas, Julieta, this was an American frog of the last quarter of the 20th century, a time when wishing apparently no longer led to anything, and Lee Cherie eventually named it Prince Charming after that son of a bitch who never comes through. Sandwiches were invented by the Earl of Sandwich, popcorn was invented by the Earl of Popcorn, and salad dressing by the oil of vinegar. The moon invented natural rhythm, civilizations uninvented it. Princess Lee Cherie would have liked to reinvent it, but at that point she hadn't a clue. She had ovened that rubber cookie called the diaphragm and gotten pregnant anyway. Many women do. She had played hostess to that squiggly metallic house guest who goes by his initials IUD and suffered cramps and infections. Many women do. She had, in desperation and against all her fundamental instincts, popped the pill. She became ill physically and emotionally. Many women do. She had experimented with the jellies and jams, creams and goops, sprays and suppositories, powders and foams, gels and gunks, only to discover her romantic personality. She had grown up with European folk tales, one tale at any rate. Repulsed by the technological textures, industrial odors, and napalm flavors, many romantic personalities are. This constant battle with the reproductive process, a war in which her only allies were pharmaceutical robots, alien agents whose artificial assistants seemed more treacherous than trustworthy, was gnawing with plastic teeth at the very concepts of love. Was it entirely paranoid to suspect that all those stoppers, thingamajigs, and substances devised to prevent conception were intended not to liberate womankind from the biological and social penalties imposed on her natural passions, but rather at the insidious design of capitalistic Puritans were supposed to technologize sex, to dilute its dark juices, to contain its wilder fires, to censor its sweet nastiness, to scrub it clean as a laboratory autoclave, clean as a hospital bed, to order it uniform, to render it safe, to eliminate the risk of uncontrollable feelings, illogical commitments, and deep involvements, substituting those risks the less mysterious, tamer risks of infection, hemorrhage, cancer, and hormone imbalance. Yes, to make sexual love so secure and sane and sanitary, so slick and frolicsome, so casual that it is not a manifestation of love at all, but a near autonomous, hedonistic scratching of a bunny itch, an itch far removed from any direct relation to the feverish enigmas of life and death, and a scratching programmed so that would in no way interfere with the real purpose of human beings in a capitalistic, puritanical society, which is to produce goods and consume them? Since she could not possibly answer the question, she couldn't even ask it without getting winded. And since by the lunch hour parking lot rendezvous in the back of her boyfriend's vans were frankly deficient in certain romantic details that she'd always associated with sex, the princess decided she would enter a second exile, celibacy. Before she could steal safely across the border, however, the biological IRS caught up with her and exacted its stubborn price. That's where we're going to end this time. I might continue reading if anybody wants to see more. If you like it, let me know, and I'll keep reading it. But if not, I'm not 100% sure if I'll honestly continue with this. But thank you for watching this. If you like it and you want to check out the actual book, again, it's Still Life with Woodpecker by Tom Robbins. Read it. It's awesome. Favorite book ever. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.